Welcome to the show, guys. We are already in fantasy football week 5. NFL week 5 is here. I'm going to give you guys all the optimal starts and all the guys you want to sit this week potentially here, guys, laid out for you in detail by position. Now, typically I do a preview show here with Jim this week. Jim is off this week, but we're going to get him back next week. So we're going to go through all the positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and even some defenses if you need to stream one, and give you the optimal plays at each position. I'm excited to dive in here. I'm going to pull up my optimizer here to give you guys an idea here how this is going to work. So I'm going to lay it all out for you. I'm excited to dive in. We're going to start off here with quarterbacks, as you can see, all laid out for you guys here on a silver platter. I'll dive into some of the players I really like to start this week, all laid out for you. Now, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys do subscribe, guys. This is very, very important. And I've teamed up with better.app, BETR.app, a better way to play DFS. If you're in a daily fantasy, this is where you need to play. Use code FFC upon sign up, guys. And here's the cool thing. You can 100x your first entry. This is a great opportunity to really capitalize on your fantasy football skills. Now, if you go and sign up right now, I've linked it here below. That's BETR.app if you're in the car. I've linked it below. I've pinned it in the comments. If you go sign up right now, DM me on Instagram, and I'll give you my plays of the week. I'll direct DM you back my plays of the week, but you have to go deposit, and you have to get in there right now and show me that you guys have signed up, and then DM me on Instagram, say I'm in, and then I'll send you my optimal plays for this week, okay? So that's BETR.app, code FFC, guys. Go. This is the better way to play DFS. Go take advantage of the opportunity right now. All right. I've linked it below. All right. Let's talk about the optimal plays at each position. Let's dive into it, guys. Week 5. I can't believe week 5 is already here. Like I said, it really just genuinely flies by after, the season starts. It just genuinely flies by. It goes really fast. But here we are, week 5. And I know a lot of people are having crazy, weeks. It's been a crazy year. A lot of players underperforming, a lot of players overperforming, having some boom games. Sometimes you get players and you play against a guy that's, Christian McCaffrey. He's been consistent, but you play against David Montgomery last week and you lose your week because they had one good week. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about everything here. So let's start off with the quarterback position here. Zach Wilson. I mean, again, if you're playing for DFS, guys, wink, wink. He's got a good match against Denver. I mean, even Fields looked good against Denver last week, so you got to take a look at the matchups. Matchups don't always play a critical part because sometimes you have a great player, you don't want to bench him. And just because he's not optimal doesn't mean you bench him, which I'm going to show you in a second. But these are the guys that have a really good matchup based on paper. Zach Wilson, Sam Howell, right? He had a 20-point week last week. It's all laid out here for you. Daniel Jones, right? Crappy week last week and, a couple weeks actually. But Daniel Jones versus Miami could score a lot of points this week, maybe a DFS play. Matt Stafford, good matchup. Joe Burrow actually has a good matchup. He's been playing like garbage. This is the week that Joe Burrow has to step up. I don't know how else to tell you this. I think he's got to do it. You got to step up, dude. Jordan Love, he's been consistent as they come. He's got a good matchup versus Vegas. Pat Mahomes versus Minnesota, and Justin Fields versus Washington. And then, of course, you've got these other guys here, that have mid-range matchups, your Tuas, your Josh Allen, your Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson. CJ Stroud has been consistent. If you could look here, Stroud has actually been really consistent, 25, 21, 26 points, okay? So then I'm going to just go here and just filter by guys that have it in a little bit tough here, okay? As you can see here, Trevor Lawrence got it a little bit tough here versus Buffalo, and he's been playing like, I would say garbage is a nice way to say it. Brock Purdy versus Dallas got it in tough. Guys, these defenses are for real. Buffalo, I mean, you saw what Miami did, to Denver a couple weeks ago, and they played Buffalo, and they kind of came back down to reality. So Buffalo's a good defense for legit. Dallas versus, San Fran versus Dallas. Brock Purdy's got it in tough. Derek Carr. Jared Goff has been consistent. I've got him as a backup because Justin Herbert, for me, Justin Herbert is out on bye week this week. So, again, am I going to be starting Goff? Possibly. Again, he's been consistent, right? I mean, 12 points last week, not the greatest. Depends on what platform you're on, right? How much weight is given to quarterback scoring. But again, Jared Goff, tougher matchup. Dak Prescott versus San Fran. Kirk Cousins versus KC. Desmond Ridder, I don't think you're starting him, versus Houston. And Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts. Tougher matchups on paper, okay? So those are your quarterbacks. And then not to say that, okay, if you have Brock Purdy, you don't have a better option, that you got to sit Brock Purdy. I'm just raising awareness that on paper, guys, these have tougher matchups. So again, I want to emphasize that, okay? Sometimes, guys, matchups play a key role. Sometimes it's, oh yeah, he crapped the bed. It was a tough matchup, but now you're aware of who has a tough matchups, and it's just about raising awareness so you guys can make executive decisions on starts and sits. Now, if you have a question below, drop it below. I'll try to get to as many as possible, but if you really want direct access to me directly, guys, head on over to patreon.com/ffcounselor. Guys, right now, join the front lines. Patreon.com/ffcounselor. I've also linked that below in the body description of this video. Join the fantasy front lines, and I'll help you guys out as much as I can. Okay, guys? Direct access, waiver wire, starts and sits. Amazing community, guys. Join the front lines. Patreon.com/ffcounselor if you want direct access. But drop a question below. I'll try to get to as many as I possibly can as well. All right? All right, let's move on to the running back position here. I mean, look at this, man. Finally, Breece Hall's got a great matchup versus position here. Look at this, 10 points last week. He's got to step it up here against Denver. I don't know how to tell you this. He's got to step it up. Brian Robinson, don't really care for him here. Joe Mixon, I mean, I have no stock in him, but he's got a good matchup versus Arizona. And David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, literally, guys, they have to start utilizing Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery, is his body going to hold up? I really don't think so. He crushed it last week. But again, it's all volume based. Jahmyr Gibbs is doing more with the attempts that he has, averaging more yards per carry. So, he's around the 4.5 yards per carry. David Montgomery's at 3.5, 3.8. So David Montgomery not doing as much with it, but they just keep pounding the ball. It's almost like they're running to the ground, getting their money's worth. But Jahmyr Gibbs is the future. I'm going to go ahead and start him. He is the RB1. I don't care what anybody says. David Montgomery will go down. Joe, you're wishing injury on people. No, I'm not. I'm saying that David Montgomery has never worked like this before. He's not going to last. Jahmyr Gibbs is the future, and he's the better running back. They got to start utilizing more. Everybody's pissed off, man. Even Detroit Lion fans, like, you draft this guy first round, first overall, and you're not using him, right? Your first overall pick. So Lions got to use him, okay? Especially if they want to win, because Gibbs is the better back. Josh Jacobs versus Green Bay, amazing matchup here. Coming off a big week last week. Prior to that, had a couple crappy weeks here, as you can see. Saquon Barkley, good matchup. Check the injury before he starts. If he's going to play this week, I think he should be good to go. But if he plays, I mean, you got to use him. Easy matchup versus Miami. Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane, great matchup. They should run all over the Giants here. Awesome matchup. Bijan Robinson versus Houston. Loving the matchup here. He started in all my leagues. I got Derrick Henry in the league as well. I'm starting him versus Indy. Great matchup. And Javonte Williams, hip flexor injury. Check the injury status before starting him. Him and Jaleel McLaughlin, if you picked them up off waiver wire. Both good matchups by position here on paper. Now, again, this is just on paper. Doesn't mean they're going to perform and crush it, right? If you have a better option, start them. For example here, Kyren Williams arguably has one of the toughest matchups versus position here versus Philly, but he's been hot. Do you sit Kyren Williams for Breece Hall? I mean, if you got both, you got to try to start both based on position. But, I mean, Kyren Williams is just getting the volume. I don't know how to tell you this. But he's got a tough matchup. Do you sit him? No, you don't sit him. I'm just making you guys aware of the positions. Now, again, Christian McCaffrey. Do you sit Christian McCaffrey? No, you do not. But this is an important show because I'm showing you that on paper, guys, laid out, clear, right here in front of you, that on paper, Christian McCaffrey does have a tough matchup. So maybe Christian McCaffrey comes back down to reality. Now, a guy like me, like, let's say he has a bad game, I'm going to rip into him, but you got to understand he does actually have a tough matchup this week versus position, okay? He's playing Dallas, so be aware of that. Dameon Pierce, who kind of came alive last week, back to a tough matchup versus Atlanta's rush defense here. Miles Sanders versus Detroit, Carolina versus Detroit, tough matchup on paper. Zeke Elliott and Stevenson, I mean, what a disaster this committee's been. I told you to stay away from this committee. Patriots can't trust them. Tough matchup versus position here for both Zeke and Stevenson here, who have been looking absolutely like garbage, 6 points and 4 points last week for the both of these guys. Crap. Madison Akers, maybe they start working Akers a bit more here. They have it in tough versus KC. Zach Moss, got to take a look at, Jonathan Taylor, see how that situation is going. If he's going to play this week, I haven't looked into it. But I heard he's activated again. So Zach Moss, if he plays, he does have it tough versus Tennessee. We're going to have to see what they're going to do with Jonathan Taylor here as well. And anyone I didn't mention, like the Pacheco's here, you can see Swift mid-range matchup 14th. You can see 14th hardest versus position here. Khalil Herbert, mid-range matchup here as well. Alvin Kamara, mid-range matchup, okay? But again, laying it out. If you're a CMC owner, you don't sit him. If you're a Williams owner, you don't sit him. But they got tough matchups. Now, if you're a Breece owner and you're thinking of benching him, right? He does have a good matchup, right? Because you're debating. He hasn't been getting the production. If there's a chance you want to flex him, maybe this is the possible week you might want to do it, okay? So just be aware of that. It's just being aware of how tough that matchup is, taking a look at the volume, how they did last week, right? We got all the numbers here, taking a look and making an executive decision on whether you should start and sit him, okay? Very, very important. Moving on to wide receivers here. Again, head on over to better.app if you guys are new to the channel. This is a partnership I've teamed up with Better, BETR.app. Go in there, guys, and 100x your first deposit, up to 100x your first deposit here. Use code FFC. Go create an account and play DFS. The better way to play DFS. Go right now. Let's move on to wide receivers here. Let's go with the best matchups here versus position. Zay Flowers versus Pittsburgh's. Easy matchup here coming off an 8-point week. Rashee Rice, if you guys need a flex play or a DFS play, does have a good matchup here versus Minnesota. Him and Kadarius Toney has been like absolute garbage. These wide receivers just absolute trash. But if you need him, maybe there's some upside motive that gets a touchdown, wins you a DFS week or something like that. If you need a flex play, any one of these guys from the Chiefs versus Minnesota could do well. Puka Nacua here, great matchup coming off a monster week. LA versus Philly, their secondary here, their corners just not defending wide receivers as well as they should be. So arguably one of the easiest matches for his position for Puka on paper. Again, this is on paper, guys. Do not bench Puka if you got him. Take a look at the Cooper Kupp situation. Guys, do your research. Dive in. DJ Moore here. Good matchup versus Washington coming off a big monster week. Last week, 30 points. Good matchup yet again. Other guys you want to consider, Garrett Wilson. I mean, we're starting to see him starting to gel with Zach Wilson. Finally, 15 points here, guys, last week. Was consistent, good for PPR. Helped me win my week last week, got over 16 points for me. So I was happy. It was in PPR, so absolutely did well. Might want to consider starting him. Hopkins just not looking good this, I'd say he's one of the busts guys literally of this week, of this year, sorry. But again, Tannehill's like 27th in passing. He's just not throwing the ball. So when you look at someone like Hopkins, I mean, you got to put him in your lineup simply because, he's the wide receiver one, easy matchup. But if you got a better option, I mean, go for it. But again, look at the matchup here. Guys like Mike Pittman here, good matchup here versus position versus Tennessee. Coming off a 5-point week, just not getting it done as well. Richardson just running the ball quite a bit. We got other guys here. I don't trust any of the Giants wide receivers. They've been an absolute disaster, as you can see from Slayton. Crappy week every week right here, like 4 points last week. Wan'Dale Robinson, 10 points. Jalen Hyde, just the rookie drafted in the third round, done nothing. I thought he was a good sleeper pick this year, just did nothing. Daniel Jones looks like garbage. So yeah, I would stay away from all Giants wide receivers, just trash, even though they got a good matchup. Unless you're playing DFS, you want to roll a dice on one. Terry McLaurin, good matchup, coming off a nice week last week versus Chicago. I do like Washington this week. All their, start almost everyone you can against Chicago, but Chicago's just not doing too hot either, right? Christian Watson, I mean, he had that touchdown to save him last week. Other than that, it was a crappy week. Romeo Doubs, they have decent matchups here this upcoming week versus Vegas, okay? So again, those are some optimal matchups, okay? Some tougher matchups here. Drake London, arguably one of the hardest position versus Houston. Tough matchup, but again, he is the wide receiver one, starting to gain that rapport with Desmond Ridder. Do you trust him? Cortland Sutton, third hardest matchup versus position versus the Jets, but he's been consistent every week. I have him in my lineups. I'm not sitting him because I look at consistency. So I take a look at matchup, I take a look at talent, I take a look at volume, and then I take a look at consistency. And Sutton's got all of those, all those boxes checked, and I'm going to go ahead and start him, okay? Brandon Ayuk here had a good week, but if you look at the weeks before, very inconsistent, 7-point, a 0-point, and then last week, 24-pointer. Very inconsistent, even with Deebo Samuel, a 28-pointer a couple weeks ago, and then a 1-pointer. Extremely inconsistent with the 49ers wide receiver core here. And then they're playing Dallas. So you just need to be aware of this. If you got better options, maybe consider them. So that is where you question it based on hard position. Like, they're already inconsistent. Now they got a tough matchup. What do I do? Do I have a better option? And then when you look at a guy like Justin Jefferson, even though he's the 5th hardest matchup on paper, according to the optimizer here versus position, you don't sit him. You just don't sit Justin Jefferson, guys, okay? Amon-Ra St. Brown, you don't sit him. 6th hardest matchup versus position versus Carolina. They activated Williams now, but I still feel that Amon-Ra is still the main guy. I'm still starting him in Laporta. I don't care about the matchup here, okay? Other guys, just take a quick glance here. A.J. Brown coming off some hot weeks here. Does actually have a tough matchup. Maybe comes back down to reality this week. Something interesting to watch here. When we look at Devontae Smith here, Who else do we got here? We want Nico Collins, Tank Dell. It's been kind of back and forth with these guys on who's performing. If you look at a couple weeks ago, it was Dell with the 29 points. And then it was Nico with 5. And then last week, it was Nico with 39 and Dell with 4. So CJ Stroud has not established who the wide receiver 1 is. I still think it's Tank Dell, but it's really interesting to see how this plays out. It's kind of like bouncing back and forth, back and forth. Not a fun situation. If you got both, maybe start both. Start one, flex one. You're guaranteed, 35 points at least, right? If you combo the two and you're going to hit the winner. So again, do you want to diverse your portfolio? Probably not. I still think Dell's the one, but either way, they got the 10th hardest matchup versus position. Just be aware of that versus Atlanta. Adams, who was injured and banged up, came back last week. Looked good again. 16 points last week. He's been hot the past 3 weeks. Just got to be aware that there's a flame there, right there, doing really, really well. Okay. So again, Jamar Chase as well. Joe Burrow, like I said, good matchup, but versus wide receiver, Jamar Chase here. 12th hardest versus position, but I'm not going to sit Jamar Chase. So again, if you got your starters, start your starters, but making you aware of the tough matchups here. Okay, guys. Let's move on here to the tight end position. Again, here, when you look at tight ends, here, let's go with the tough matchups. Cole Kmet, I mean, coming off a hot week, does have a tough matchup this week. So a lot of people who started Cole Kmet last week are like, hey, man, he crushed it for me. I got to go. I mean, look at the 2 weeks before that. Very inconsistent, 8 points and 4 points. And then he's got this big boom week, and then he's got a tough matchup. So if you're looking at Cole Kmet, you got to say, hey, man, very unlikely he's going to duplicate these numbers. Very unlikely, especially based on matchup. So just be aware of that. Awareness, guys. It's a big part of the battle for starts and sits, okay? Evan Ingram here, Jacksonville at Buffalo. Tough matchup, obviously, here. Juwan Johnson from the Saints. He's done nothing the past 3 weeks, like just absolute crap. Tight ends here from the Saints. I'm just not going to go ahead and start anybody there. Hunter Henry's been boring at best. 9 points last week. Tough matchup here versus the Saints as well. Obviously, Gesicki just hasn't done anything either. Again, you want to look at consistency here. George Kittle, man, very crappy this year. Guy that I was like just not drafting, not just fading. Tougher matchup versus Dallas. Be aware. Laporta, I'm starting him. He's been consistent as they come. Safe, solid. 10th hardest matchup versus position versus Carolina. Still going to go ahead and start him here. Again, Kelsey here, mid-range matchup. You got to start Kelsey, obviously. When you look at tight ends, guys, as I'm pulling up here the optimal ones, you got to take a look and say, are they giving me 10 points a week? Are they consistent? You might want to consider starting them if so. You want that 10 points out of them. Higbee's a must start this week for sure. Consistent, great matchup. Last 2 weeks, over 10 points. Second easiest matchup versus position. Look at a guy like Troutman from Denver. Even though his matchup is good, he's done nothing. You don't want to start Troutman. You don't want to start any tight end here from Denver, just not getting it done. None of these guys got done. So use common sense, guys, here. I do like Tyler Conklin this week. I think his matchup is great versus Denver, Jets versus Denver, and he's been relatively consistent the past 3 weeks. 10 points, 6 points, 10 points, okay? Keep aware of that. Zach Ertz, I mean, pretty safe, pretty solid the past 3 weeks, except for 2 weeks ago, he had a 3-pointer. But good matchup here, guys, versus Cincinnati. Be aware of that. Dawson Knox, Kincaid, depends on who you have here. Any one of these guys is capable of getting a touchdown anytime. Looks like they're going to other targets, though. Josh Allen is, but again, good matchups here for both Kincaid and Dawson Knox if you're looking at it, especially for DFS. And there you have it. Darren Waller, a lot of people upset about him. I wasn't too high on him. Good matchup this week if you're interested. Hawkinson, I mean, bad week last week, but good matchup versus KC. And Luke Musgrove, also a good matchup this week here, guys, versus Vegas. Let's go through some streaming defenses here for you, get you guys all set. Make sure you guys subscribe and go to betr.app. Use code FFC and go create an account, guys. This is honestly the best way to play DFS. Head on over there right now, betr.app, guys. Use code FFC. I've teamed up with them. Great company, great people, and they've got a great way to play DFS, guys. Okay, that's where I play my DFS. Go try it out right now. All right, let's go here. Let's go defenses here. Now, when I look at defenses, I look at not only so much optimal matchups here. I just pull it up here. I look at all the matchups and take a look at who they're playing. Now, again, if you got Dallas Cowboys defense, you're probably likely and inclined to start them. Even 49ers, even though they're playing, kind of tougher offenses, Dallas is playing an offense that's very potent, right? So they're going to, even though they're a great offense, look at the 27-pointer last week, but you got to take a look and okay, they've got a bit of a tougher matchup. So maybe a streaming option might be more viable. So again, you got Cincinnati versus Arizona, very viable streaming option. You got the Giants and Miami. I don't agree with this one here. Again, I guess is based on some sort of algorithmic thing where they're figuring out that Miami won't score points or something like that. This one I disagree with here. I don't agree with this one. I mean, it could be a good streaming option, but I really think that Miami will run through them potentially this week. Okay, so yeah, I would disregard that. So sometimes, yeah, the algorithm does things, and I'm just like, yeah, I kind of oversee that. And I'm like, yeah, probably not. I mean, watch the Giants end up with 30 points this week on defense. You never know. And then you got Titans versus Indy. I don't mind this one here unless Anthony Richardson gets going here. Jets versus Denver. This is a sneaky streamer defense this week. I like this. And this one absolutely makes sense to me because Denver, I don't trust them at all. And, just very volatile. So Jets could be a good streamer. I like this. Ravens versus Pittsburgh makes sense. Ravens have been a consistent defense. 17 points last week. Not bad. KC versus Minnesota could be a good streamer. Packers versus Vegas. Very viable. Not too consistent the past 2 weeks, but relatively good against Vegas here. Bears versus Washington wouldn't be so bad as well. Okay, guys? So those are some streaming defenses you may want to consider. Again, guys, when you're looking at starts and sits, you want to definitely start your starters for the most part, but you also, again, want to take a look at volume, and then you want to, again, look at matchups as well, all right? If you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe, thumbs up, drop any questions below. I'll try to get to them. NFL Week 5 is here. Hopefully this helps you guys a lot. I know it will. And join the patreon.com, guys, patreon.com/FFcounselor for direct access to me. Linked it below, guys. All right? We'll talk soon. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon. Week 5 is here. I'm out.